Hey guys, Yuto here. Welcome back to Aster Year. And I think that I found out that I've been saying year wrong this whole time because it's been puzzling me for a while now about how you actually say that word since it's derived from ancient Greek and English has different rules and pronunciation. So that I found that it's actually Yea, not Gaia or Gaia, Aster Gaia, Aster Gaia. It's Aster Year. Well, anyways, in this episode, I'll be focusing on the start of utilities infrastructure since we kind of already set the basis of the origin of most of the mass transit in the last episode in the center of the city, as you can see here. And I'm not going to lay down bus, metro, and train lines yet until we start zoning in. But for now, I want to lay down the essentials to a city, such as power, garbage management, and water. I'll start with the power in this episode and work on other utilities in the following episode, but before I start, you can see that I already laid down the basic road layout of the city, roughly following the pulsar map on the left here. I've also dezoned everything to get back to its bare skin so you can kind of see where all the infrastructure is so we can better plan in the future once we start zoning in and putting in more services like hospitals and stuff like that. So far for what I had in mind for a futuristic style power plant that has a theme of eco-friendliness, I was wondering of how I could integrate a power plant with nature. Obviously sometime in the future, probably very distant, we'll be able to unlock the power of the stars, which is nuclear fusion. And already the game has a fusion power plant building. It's not my most favorite building, mainly because it's just really tall for a power plant. And other fusion power plants that I've seen in other games and even in the real world is generally wide and flat on the ground or just pretty much underground. But I still wanted to use this fusion power plant building because, you know, it's from the game and I kind of want to utilize it. So I had two ideas in mind, and one was to make a concave depression into the ground and have the fusion power plant just sit in there. Pretty much like a crater or a quarry. The other was a convex, like a volcano. On an island with possible threats like rising sea levels and tsunamis, I eliminated the concave design because, you know, it could possibly like flood and stuff like that. And then I went with the convex. Also that the convex would probably look a little bit more natural since it kind of imitates a volcano. I also had another plan which was to flood the convex of the volcano with water. But I later scrapped that idea when I wasn't able to find out how I could make the power plant work underwater. It's not possible at all. There was another idea that was scrapped, and that was doing the same thing with the cooling tower, sinking it under or into the ground, but I ended up not liking it because the base, which is surrounded by roads for the cooling tower, would make the mouth of the rim too wide when all I really wanted was to expose the opening of the cooling tower, not the base due to the roads linking the cooling tower so that it could operate. In the meantime of thinking of other ways to naturalize the power plant, I thought why not pretend most of the power plant is underground and make some kind of earthly mounds or domes to represent something like a reactor or something. So I made reactors 1, 2, and 3 up to 5. I surrounded the outflow channel of cooled water with these reactors here, and this outflow channel would go into this little kind of I guess it's kind of like a little lake on the island that's already pre-made there. And I pretty much like this whole natural environment. This whole island is really nice and beautiful. Props to the guys that made it. Now this power plant is looking pretty flat and expansive. It took me a long time to find out what exactly I was going to do and how I can integrate this with the future city. And with the future city in mind was that I want to make this a very dense city, pretty much like Utopia because it's the future, so we're expecting overpopulation and trying to compact as much people as we can into a very small area, but not so degrading, I guess you could say. People have their own spaces to enjoy life and do things, and that's why I want to kind of like integrate parks and all this other stuff to make life enjoyable rather than just make some kind of a huge slum or something. But yeah, with the volcano like setting for the fusion power plant and the wide area for the mounds, I kind of just stopped thinking about how expansive it was and leave it be until the city actually develops and start consuming most of the land. However, I want to try to not hit the object limit so early, so maybe being expansive in some areas such as the power plant or some kind of industrial setting, as well as parks and other natural areas, as I said before, to help kind of balance that density and natural look, would help prevent this object limit from arising. The map is already the map already has an abundance of water that takes away buildable land, so that does add to the cause of helping out. And here we have the final result. I've been on the fence about this design throughout the whole construction of how realistic this would be actually, and wasn't sure of how you guys would react to this design, say like the volcano-like enclosure for the fusion power plant. I wish the footprint of the fusion power plant would be smaller, but there was another design that I tested out which was similar, and that was to use the Spectra superconductor, a custom asset in the workshop that pretty much looks like a giant orb harnessing magnetic energy. I was going to use that in place of the massive tall looking fusion power plant that came with City Skylines and do the same of putting it into the volcano, but setting it on top of the volcano surrounded by water. There's also another asset of using the fusion power plant from the SimCity 3000 game that someone made in the workshop. But regardless, let me know what you guys think of the progress I made so far. I do like the volcano does add some character to the surrounding terrain and gives the impression that it's pretty clean and open, well, on the surface that is of the terrain. Pretty open and clean, and most of the action occurs underground and secluded. Probably my most favorite thing about this design is the reactors and the outflow channel. I'm planning to add a railroad system, like a rail yard, around the plant, but how big it will be is still a concern and a debate, because the point here is to not consume so much land and make the environment not look too industrialized. It's pretty hard to think that in some ways of how to integrate industry with nature in City Skylines when most of the industrial buildings are dirty, unlike in SimCity 2013 when you have some high-tech laboratories that you could build, but those also produce pollutants as well. I'll probably displace a large portion of my workforce into offices rather than actual manufacturing industries. I think that would be more logical anyways, and just assuming that the future relies more on robotics to kind of just make our stuff. Over to the right on the small island, I'm going to develop the water treatment facility, and there it'll have the same theme in mind of naturalizing into the surrounding environment and terrain. I managed to cut down the height of the mountain range behind the fusion power plant because the height just looked really unnatural, and I kind of wanted to roughen it up a bit to make it a little bit more organic. Speaking of organic, I'll definitely spice up the area around this small lake, including the fusion power plant, to give things a little bit more depth and character in the natural sense. I really want to put the emphasis on trying to retain the natural beauty of this island rather while integrating mankind's just pretty much steel and concrete beings into the mix here. But that's it for this, guys. Tune in next time for the water treatment facility, and I'll see you guys later.